aspiring devotees that don't have spontaneous attraction for Krishna. Krishna explains in the Gita that just think of me be my devotee, But if you can't do that, then at least follow this program that's given by the acharyas, and then you will develop a desire to attain me. So your desires will change. You become purified, and you see that all around us. Yeah, so the pullings are there, but sometimes you can see. It's a good thing to do at night time when you pay your obeisances to the deities and your spiritual master, that you take into account your day. And many devotees do that, and you to see how you give yourself a bit of be your own critique. There's no point to criticise others. So just have a good look at yourself. And just see how well, give yourself a pat on the back if you did if you think you did okay. Some areas of the day, look at the areas where perhaps where you could have done better and where you were weak, and why that happened and what led to it. Just analyse, because the mind sort of moves very quick, the mind, from one thing to the next. And we're taught in the Gita to bring it back. Isn't it? When you chant your rounds, it's like mind explosion sometimes. It's like, what the hell's going on here? And you wonder but it's going on all the time, but you notice it more when you try and focus. And especially when you try and focus on Krishna, then you realise, boy, I think I've read somewhere that there's something like 35,000 thoughts a day that we have go through our mind. It's a busy damn thing, isn't it? So you got to, so it doesn't happen overnight. It's practice, determination, cultivation of a good desires, praying, and like it mentions later on in this thing, Krishna is understood through surrender and His mercy. So it's not at the end of the day, it's not going to be us that's going to do it. It's going to be by the blessings of our spiritual predecessors, our seniors, the Shastra, like that, Prabhupada. We're going to make it. If we make it anywhere, it's going to be by their grace. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, they've come here to pick up the scraps, We can't say by our own spiritual prowess we're going to conquer the spiritual world and turn up there, here I am, it's me. No. We're going to be there like our heads down, straw in the mouth, realising, because we're fallen. We've done horrible things. We've left Krishna, turn our back. We can't expect to just turn around and that's it. Even though Krishna has never turned his back on us, he's always been there for us. But now we've got to be a little bit humble and follow the process, be patient, and wonderful things will happen by the mercy of these spiritual teachers and masters and devotees. Does that answer a little bit? Hello? Yagna. So you got some there, Maharaj? You want to give them the... Okay. Yes. Yeah, this... Yeah. And then became... He was a son of a Kuti. Yeah. I don't know if it's... I've reread that. It does... Suryana, as the Indradev diminished... Yeah. I have read that actually his sister was Lakshmana. I think he later married her. She's named Suyama was actually, as mentions here, the son of Akuti, who was the daughter of Swami Vimanu. But there was a deal made that her son would go back to Swami Vimanu. So he actually went back to Swami Vimanu as the son, his grandson went back to Manu. His sister stayed with Akuti and her husband, as mentioned there. And later on they got back to bed. It is mentioned someplace that she's Lakshmi and he's the supreme, like that. So, and he's one of the incarnations, Yagna, it's called. And sometimes you read the list of incarnations. But I found it hard to understand, to be honest with you. I didn't have a lot of time to look into it. and there's also another thing. If we say Indra, because as we know, Indra is a post. Many of the demigods are posts. They're not posts. In other words, it changes every time there's a change of Manu. Also, the Manu avatars are mentioned. They change there's 14 in a day of Brahma. We have approximately 71 cycles of yugas each. There's 1,000 yugas in a day, one day of Brahma, which is 4.3 billion years, and I think 300 and something else, 330 million years each Manu lives for. So some of these, so if he's an incarnation, I don't know whether he would fall in that category of Jiva as a temporary, because I know the Sakyavesha are eternal. This is a very wonderful chapter actually with this beginning. It's one that's probably worth the devotee to come to class every day to read right through while you're actually attending classes. It's quite an important chapter. It covers all the main incarnations are covered, the types of incarnation, Leela, avatars, Guna avatars, Yuga avatars, Vesha avatars, all sorts of manifestation of the Lord in various forms are described very nicely, and very importantly, like Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport, the place where they appear, the name of his parents, and also the mission is mentioned, why they come, what they come to achieve. It's quite interesting. So, and then later in the chapter, Krishna, of course, is mentioned also very nicely, the greatness of Krishna. How difficult it is to understand Krishna is described, and how to understand Krishna is through surrender, and by the mercy of the Lord it can be understood somewhat. The various Kali incarnations mentioned, like Buddha and Kalki, like mentioned in this report. Anyway, these are the main things that we discuss. It's the position of Krishna. It's very similar in a sense to chapter 3 of the first canto, Krishna, the source of all incarnations. So the position of all incarnations are listed, and then the position of Krishna is expounded upon, I think, in this purport. Sutta Goswami speaks in the first canto, and he says, Lord Brahma speaking, which is pretty much is the topmost authority in this universe. He's been here from day one, and he knows past, present, and future. Because, like I say, the mention of Kalki is talked about, which is still 400,000 years to come. And things are quite different at that time. This is the tail end of Kali Yuga. And if you read the descriptions of the fourth canto, it's not a very nice time to be around. Okay? Especially if you want to play basketball. It's all pretty short. Men are about 2 foot tall, and cockroaches are described the size of dogs. So you need a big can of bait on. You want to cut it with a small can. Alicia, I guess you need bigger gaps in your floorboards or cracks in your end to get in, but still. It's a rough time to be around, and it's not like now. This is a very blessed time, because now we can sit and discuss Krishna consciousness, Krishna Katha, in a peaceful environment. You don't have to worry about people eating your babies. It will happen later on. Feeding human beings, there'll be no grains, no vegetables, no fruit. It's a rough place, and it's described. And Kalki comes in, and he doesn't sit down and preach philosophy. There's no Sunday feast, no cocktails. He just simply pulls out his sword, and he basically wipes out most of the miscreants, especially the leaders, the false kings, very simple Sudras of that period, and he simultaneously purifies them all. When you're killed by the hands of the Lord, and it's explained actually in the 12th canto that he has a very wonderful scent, which is very interesting, and that scent purifies the living entities, because it's the end of a yuga, and we know the yuga is a cycle. So now we're going to get back into such a yuga at some point. There's a bit of a gap, I think, about 1,000 years or so while things get reset, I guess. But anyway, we can imagine what happened to his head. He got very sharply disconnected from his body by the actual Sudarsana Chakra of the original Supreme Personality body, nicely trimmed off. And he took off his mate's head as well, Kashi's head went off as well. I think he went flying back into Kashi that one. It leads on to another pastime. But The great, wonderful thing with Krishna, when you're killed by Krishna, is explained in the Bhagavatam, and also Srila Prabhupada explained in the Krishna book, because he was always thinking of Krishna, of dressing up like him and meditating on him. He became purified, and when he was killed, he actually came to liberation. So it's very important. Prabhupada mentions that these things have to be authorized. They can't be just concocted. And people get easily cheated because they don't have reference to scripture. It's very important to get proper references. Consult. Srila Prabhupada's purports are so powerful because he consults the previous acharyas. He doesn't just make it up and just make up statements. He actually, it's authorized, and when it's authorized, it carries a lot of power because you have the blessings of all the previous acharyas. And when our acharyas write, you can see their mood. And Krishnadas Kavirata Swami, the way they pray and surrender to the previous acharyas, they're fully dependent on their mercy. Fully dependent on their mercy. They don't take credit for themselves. Then everything becomes very powerful, very pure, and very effective when people hear these commentaries of such acharyas. So Kalki, we'll mention Kalki, is a very short purport. This is, I don't know a lot about this particular incarnation, maybe others here may know. I think it's Yagna is referring to. Fruti was a daughter of Swami Bhagavan. I think Devaruti's sister as well. And a third one. Anyone know? Anyway, you've got to read that. These are listed in the fourth, if you read the beginning of the fourth canto, the lineage from Swami Bhagavan is listed. Anyway, the main point that is being made here, that everything has to be authorized. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Yas Shastra Vidim Uchija Vatate Kamakarata. Anyway, a very important verse. It says if you act according to your own whim, you become whimsical, and to come to the material world is a very whimsical act. And you disregard scripture, which is the guidelines, the guidebook, it's like the manual for living into this material world. You follow the manual. So when you buy anything, buy a car, buy a flat pack, whatever, if you don't read the instructions, you get into a bit of a mess, as we all know. I was watching my boys yesterday. I was assembling a swing for the kids, and they were trying to put the big bolts in the small holes in it because they weren't reading the instructions. I was telling you to use in the wrong bolts. They went, no, we know. They don't know because they have to finally surrender. They read the instructions and they were able to do it properly. So the Shastras, the grace of the Lord, even though we turn our backs on Him, He slips in a manual to go with it. So when we get here, we can figure out what to do. Otherwise, we become bewildered, and you act according to your own whim, your senses, your mind, your impulses. And Nasidim, Krishna says, you will not reach perfection if you disregard Scripture. You will not reach Nasukam, you will not become happy. There's no evidence of anyone becoming happy in the material world. No, I've never heard of such a person or thing or being. Anyone heard of anyone? Any names? Brad Pitt? Yeah. Anybody else? No, Jimi Hendrix, didn't go well for him. Elvis, didn't go well for him either. No, there's no evidence. It's interesting because there's no evidence, but still we're convinced if we sort of, do our little thing and make our plans that somehow or other we'll be able to become successful in the material world. It is not possible. It's not possible. So I've lost my track. What were we talking about? Yeah, Yashashtra, Nasukam, you cannot become happy. Na param gatim, you will not reach the supreme destination. Krishna says that. If you disregard scripture, these are the three outcomes. No perfection, that means imperfect. Nasukam, it means not happy, it means unhappy. Na param gatim, it says you don't make it to the right place. You end up in the wrong place, which is generally another body, another situation, very much the same. Depending on your karma, it will be a little bit better or a little bit worse, or be quite bad if you're very sinful. End up you do a little run through the hellish planets where you're conditioned for your sinful act to be punished and conditioned for your next body. These scriptures are there in the 5th canto. It's horrible. But living it, but it's ultimately, you could say it's tough love by the Lord. He's there to get us back home as quick as possible. So whatever it takes. So this chapter is very informative, worth reading. You'll hear about the authorized incarnations, those that have come and those that are yet to come, why they come, and how to pick a real incarnation from a fake incarnation, so we don't become bewildered and worship cheap, make-believe gods as such. I won't go a lot longer because I didn't really have time to. I'm sort of just filling in for Money Bandit. So if anyone has any comments or questions at this point, very helpful. Okay.
And we know that when we tend to struggle, we've got the senses, we've got the form of body, trying to get the food button, the mind's everywhere, and sometimes we get distracted. How can we keep in that mood of urgency and keeping sometimes think at the forefront without being so distracted?
Maybe spend a little bit less time on the internet. It will help for starters. Because that's where most of obviously there's wonderful things on the internet, but you've got to be great power to disseminate what's worth listening to or watching versus what the mind and senses are attracted to, especially if it's alpha, offensive criticism of devotees can be found on there. It's very, very poisonous, not very dear to the Lord at all. You want to aparad. Where's aparad mean? Aparad. Right? Not Radha, going away from Radha. Aparad. So if you want to go away from Krishna consciousness, so that's one type of distraction, is the nonsense village talk and stuff that may be out there. So you avoid that. And it's about doing the positives and avoiding the negatives. There's that famous little analogy that was like a Kirtan Maharaj had years ago, and Rannath Maharaj are very fond of quoting about the two dogs. There's two dogs that live inside of us. There's a good dog and a bad dog, and they're fighting. And the question is, which dog is going to win? Whichever dog you feed is going to win. It's as simple as that. So it's about taking real interest in ourselves, and it's difficult because we've been conditioned for a long time. So there's a lot of habits there that aren't even from this lifetime, that are carried over from previous lifetimes, and they're embedded in our subtle body, because the subtle body comes with you from lifetime to lifetime. So all the garbage, all the impressions, all the wants, all the desires, it's there embedded deeply in your subtle body, so you're not just dealing with this present body, which is just a manifestation of your previous desires and in your last life. That's just really an instrument for the subtle body, the gross body. So you've got to understand your position, you've got to take shelter, and you've got to understand we're fallen. It's difficult, but Srila Prabhupada has given us a very nice situation. He's created these spiritual embassies all over the world, where you can take association. They're sometimes described as hospitals. You can hang out with the fellow patients and compare your disease with another one, discuss it with devotees. The process itself is very powerful. If you chant 16 rounds every day, the more attentive the better, the more pure and the more protected you will be. Read Srila Prabhupada's books, associate with like-minded devotees. Devotees are interested in making advancement, and that's how you protect yourself. The process is we are with sadhakas or following Vaidhi Bhakti, which is